The desert winds whisper of a forgotten friendship. Two nations, separated by language, by faith, by empires and bloodshed, yet bound by something older than politics, older than kings. Persia and Israel. The names stir ancient dust from forgotten scrolls, but what truly connected them, and why now? Beneath the veil of modern tension lies a shared memory. A memory buried in Babylon's ruins and carved into the stones of Jerusalem. Most have forgotten the moment Persia saved the Jews, but prophecy never forgets. And heaven keeps detailed records. Why would God choose a Persian king, Cyrus the Great, to liberate his people? Why would Isaiah, a Hebrew prophet, call a Gentile ruler his anointed? There are no accidents in the divine blueprint. Every alliance, every exile, every return. It's all part of a countdown. Today, the Middle East is a boiling pot. Iran and Israel stare each other down, missiles aimed, ideologies burning. But rewind history, and you'll find moments of peace, honor, even covenant. What changed? What was broken? And could it ever be restored? This is not just history, this is a revelation, a cinematic unveiling of Persia and Israel's entangled past and the spiritual war that still echoes through time. The Messiah's path runs through these lands. The question is, will we recognize the signs before the final trumpet sounds? Long before the modern borders of Israel and Iran were drawn, their ancestors walked the same earth, sometimes as conqueror and captive, sometimes as unlikely allies. In the 6th century BCE, a great empire rose from the east. Persia, under Cyrus the Great, swept across Mesopotamia like fire through dry grass. And in the ashes of Babylon, something unexpected happened. A door opened for the Jewish exiles. The Jews, once shackled by Babylon's cruelty, heard the unthinkable freedom declared by a Gentile king. Cyrus did not just permit their return. He financed it. "The Lord has appointed me," he proclaimed, echoing words Isaiah had written long before Cyrus was even born. Could a pagan emperor truly be anointed by the God of Israel? Or was this a glimpse into something deeper? A divine pattern unfolding? As they returned to Zion, the Israelites carried more than building materials. They carried a new worldview shaped by Persian law, tolerance, and mysticism. The land they returned to had changed, but so had they. What began as captivity ended in a cultural fusion, one that would subtly shape Judaism itself long after Persia's star faded, but alliances are never without tension. While Persia offered sanctuary, she also brought influence, new customs, new gods, new philosophies. Did Israel merely survive, or did it silently transform? Could a nation preserve its identity after bathing in the language and luxury of its liberator? This chapter in history was not just geopolitical. It was spiritual. God used a foreign empire to restore his chosen people. But the seeds planted during that restoration would grow in ways few expected. And not all those roots pointed toward heaven. It began in silence. Not with war drums or chariots, but with vision. From the mountains of Elam to the plains of Media, a young empire stirred. The Persian tribes, once fragmented, united under one banner, and at their helm stood Cyrus, strategist, reformer, prophet to some, a king unlike the world had seen. His empire would not only conquer, it would transform. Babylon fell without a fight. Its gates swung open to Cyrus like a prophecy fulfilled. The world watched in awe as temples were preserved, religions respected, captives freed. This was not the tyranny of Assyria, nor the pride of Egypt. This was something new, divine even. And in the ruins of Babel, a covenant was rewritten, not with Israel alone, but with the conscience of mankind. To the Jews, Cyrus was more than a ruler. He was a miracle. Isaiah had named him over a century before his birth. Cyrus, my shepherd, my anointed. How could this Gentile be God's chosen instrument? Was this divine irony or divine design? For once, salvation came not from within Zion, but from the east, from the very lands once cursed by the flood of Babel. Persian governance brought order. Postal systems, roads, coins, but it also brought philosophy. Zoroastrianism, with its fire temples and cosmic dualism, began to whisper its truths into Jewish ears. Heaven and hell, angels and demons, light and shadow. Were these ancient truths remembered, or foreign doctrines adopted? The rise of Persia wasn't just the ascent of a nation. It was the turning of an age. The axis of biblical history shifted. Eastward and through Cyrus, God reminded the world, "I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy." Even if it comes cloaked in the garments of a Persian king, Jerusalem burned, her walls shattered, her temple desecrated. The smoke of Solomon's legacy rose into the heavens as the Babylonians marched God's people into exile. To many, it felt like the end. The covenant was broken, the ark was gone. Silence fell over Zion, and in that silence, a question echoed: had God abandoned his people? Or was he still speaking, just in a different tongue? In Babylon, the Jews wept by the rivers. But as they wept, they also listened. They adapted. They preserved their scriptures, rebuilt their identity, and whispered prayers in foreign lands. Priests became scribes. Prophets became teachers. And what began as punishment became preparation. Babylon broke their pride, but Persia would test. Their hope dot when Persia conquered Babylon, a strange grace emerged. Cyrus, now ruler of the captives, did not mock their God. He honored him in a decree now etched in stone. He gave the Jews permission to return and rebuild. Not just their city, but their worship, their soul. Was this a mere political move, or prophecy unfolding with precision? Ezra, Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, these names returned from exile carrying scrolls and blueprints. With Persian blessing, they laid the foundation of the Second Temple. But something had changed. The temple stood, yet the ark was gone. The voice of the prophets had grown faint. Was this restoration, or a shadow of what once was? The exile was not just displacement, it was transformation. A crucible where the identity of Israel was refined. And Persia, though foreign in blood, became woven into the destiny of God's people. History may call it diplomacy, but heaven called it redemption through fire. He was a Gentile king, yet called the Lord's anointed. Cyrus the Great stood at the crossroads of history and prophecy, wielding not just a sword but divine permission. Long before his empire rose, Isaiah had spoken his name. He will rebuild my city and set my exiles free. To Israel shattered and scattered, he was no mere conqueror. He was deliverance in human form. Cyrus did not demand conversion. He did not erase identities. Instead, he recognized the divine calling upon Israel and empowered it. His edict allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem, rebuild their temple, and reestablish their laws. Foreign kings do not usually fund their subjects' religions. Yet, Cyrus did. Why? Was he moved by God? Or merely a tool in a larger plan? The temple's reconstruction began not with gold, but with memory. The elders who had seen Solomon's temple wept not in joy, but in sorrow. This new beginning felt pale in comparison. Yet beneath the surface, something deeper was stirring. The resilience of a people preserved through exile. Now reborn under the shadow of Persia's banner, Cyrus became a symbol of hope, of unexpected grace, of God's sovereignty over empires. But his legacy was double-edged. Some Jews saw his favor as a sign of alliance with foreign wisdom. Others feared it blurred the lines between the sacred and the political. Could Israel remain pure while leaning on the strength of an empire? The liberation by Cyrus was more than a historical footnote. It was a hinge in the divine timeline. A moment when God reached into history, not through thunder or plagues, but through a Gentile king. And in that act, he reminded Israel and us that his plans often unfold in the most unexpected hands. The winds shifted once more. Persia, mighty and benevolent, began to fade into the shadows of history. From the west came a storm swift, brilliant, and relentless. Alexander the Great, the young Macedonian conqueror, swept across the known world like a wildfire. Persia fell. Its palaces, once adorned with symbols of divine kingship, were plundered. And in their place, the Greeks erected a new order. Hellenism brought with it beauty and arrogance. Philosophy replaced prophecy. Statues of gods lined streets where once scrolls of scripture were read. In Jerusalem, Greek theaters emerged. Hebrew tongues gave way to Greek dialects. To many, it was progress. To the faithful, it was apostasy. Was this just cultural evolution or the slow erasure of a divine identity? The Seleucid Empire rose from the ashes of Alexander's conquest, taking control of Judea. At first, there was tolerance. But then came Antiochus IV, who crowned himself Epiphanes, God manifest. He desecrated the temple, erected an altar to Zeus, and banned the sacred practices of the Jews. Circumcision was outlawed. Sabbath punished. Torah scrolls burned. Persia once honored the Jews. The Greeks tried to erase them. Resistance burned in the hearts of a few. A priest named Mattathias struck down a royal official. His sons, most notably Judah Maccabee, led a revolt that would shake the foundations of Greek dominance. Against all odds, the Jews reclaimed their temple. Hanukkah was born not just as a festival of lights, but as a cry of defiance against forced assimilation. Persia had been a partner in restoration. Greece was a crucible of compromise. Yet both empires were necessary. For in the collision of foreign ideologies and divine covenant, Israel learned to fight not only for survival, but for holiness. And through these trials, the path to the Messiah became clearer, carved through war, resistance, and unwavering faith. It began in the countryside far from the marble halls of Hellenistic rule. A single act of defiance. A Jewish priest named Mattathias, burning with righteous fury, struck down a royal envoy who demanded pagan sacrifice. His cry echoed through the hills, "Let everyone who is zealous for the law follow me." And so began the revolt that would shake an empire. The Maccabees, his sons, were not trained warriors, but they knew the terrain, the scriptures, and the God of their fathers. With guerrilla tactics and unwavering faith, they defied the Seleucid army. Miraculously, they reclaimed Jerusalem. The temple once defiled by Zeus was cleansed and rededicated. Oil that should have lasted one day burned for 8, a sign. A spark in the dark, but victory brought questions. For the first time in centuries, the Jews had their own kingdom again, the Hasmonean dynasty. No foreign kings, no exile. But power has its price. Priests became kings. Politics and piety blurred. Corruption crept in. Had they fought to restore holiness or to seize control? The line between deliverance and dominance grew thin. Still, the revolt preserved something vital. It declared to the world and to Israel that God's covenant could not be erased by swords or statues. That even in the face of forced assimilation, a remnant would remain. The Maccabees were flawed, but they were chosen instruments in a time of testing. And their legacy would echo into the days of Rome. The Maccabean era was both a triumph and a warning. It proved that faith can ignite revolutions, but that victory without humility breeds new chains. Yet through it all, the thread of prophecy remained intact, stretched, but unbroken. A throne had been reclaimed, but the true king had not yet come. The golden age of cooperation had faded, but Persia's shadow still lingered. Even after Greek rule took the stage, Persian influence had not vanished. It had embedded itself within Jewish life, in language and law and philosophy. What began as gratitude was now a quiet struggle. Could Israel remain Israel after centuries shaped by foreign thought? Zoroastrianism had left fingerprints on Jewish eschatology, ideas of final judgment, angelic hierarchies, and cosmic dualism subtly mirrored in late Second Temple theology. Were these revelations from God, or echoes of Persia's fire temples? The boundary between adoption and adaptation blurred, and not all voices within Israel agreed on where to draw the line. Some viewed Persian culture as a gift of God's providence, a means of preserving faith through foreign lenses. Others saw danger, a dilution of truth wrapped in intellectual seduction. Rabbis debated, sects formed. Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes all wrestling with identity in a world where exile had become normal. Was purity possible after so much exposure? Politically, Persia no longer ruled Judea, but alliances and trade still tied Jewish communities across the empire. From Susa to Jerusalem, correspondence flowed, ideas traveled, loyalties conflicted. Could one be loyal to Zion and still carry the wisdom of Cyrus? The question was not just historical, it was deeply spiritual. Who truly shapes the soul of a nation? The conflict was not one of swords, but of symbols. Whispers of Persian fire met chants of Hebrew prayer. And amid this tension, one truth remained. Israel was still in waiting for a Messiah, for redemption. For clarity, the Persian years had offered survival, but not salvation. That would come from elsewhere, though perhaps still from the east. ****. Not all influence comes through conquest. Sometimes it seeps in like a slow river, quiet, persistent, reshaping the landscape over generations. Between Persia and Israel, culture became a bridge, trade routes carried goods, but beneath the surface, deeper exchanges took place: words, art, theology. Persia did not just change Israel's history, it left its fingerprints on her soul. Aramaic, once a language of the empire, became the daily speech of the Jews. Scrolls were copied not in Hebrew, but in the script of their former captors, Persian. Architecture inspired the columns of synagogues. Even in the temple courts, subtle flourishes whispered of the East, the very way the Jews told stories, interpreted dreams, and measured the heavens bore traces of Persia's ancient wisdom. Zoroastrian thought spoke of light versus darkness, of a coming savior, of a final battle. And strangely, these themes echoed in Jewish apocalyptic texts. Was this corruption or confirmation? Had Persia remembered fragments of Eden? Or had Israel forgotten to guard the borders of divine truth? The line between inspiration and infiltration became hauntingly thin. Not all Jews resisted the change. In diaspora communities throughout the Persian Empire, some adopted Zoroastrian rituals and ethics. Others integrated Persian art and literature into their worship and law. The cultural mingling enriched Jewish spirituality, but also seeded future controversies over identity. In this dance of influence, Persia and Israel were locked in an eternal dialogue. One whispered of fire and judgment, the other of covenant and mercy. Together, they shaped a theology that still echoes in the halls of faith today. The rise of Islam brought a new chapter in the relationship between Persia and Israel. The Arab conquest swept away old empires but preserved many ancient traditions. Persia's influence survived in Islamic theology, philosophy, and governance. Meanwhile, Jewish communities found new homes under Muslim rule, including in Persian lands. Early Islamic thinkers, many Persian by birth or training, integrated Zoroastrian and Jewish ideas into their religious discourse. Concepts of angels, judgment, and eschatology were expanded, sometimes deepening spiritual understanding, sometimes blurring distinctions. Jewish life under Islamic Persia was complex. Communities flourished in trade and scholarship, but also faced restrictions and periodic persecutions. Yet Jewish Persian poets, philosophers, and rabbis left a profound mark on both Jewish and Islamic cultures. Politically, the alliance between Jewish and Persian communities under Islam was fragile, influenced by broader regional tensions, sometimes cooperation, often cautious coexistence. Yet beneath the surface, shared history and intertwined faiths continued to shape identities and politics. The legacy of this era is a tapestry woven from tolerance, conflict, and transformation, a reminder that ancient bonds between Persia and Israel persist even through the rise and fall of empires. Fast forward to modern times, and the echoes of ancient Persia and Israel still resonate. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 rekindled historic memories but also introduced new conflicts, particularly with Iran, the successor state of ancient Persia. Diplomatic relations have been tense, marked by ideological hostilities and regional rivalries. Yet beneath the surface lies a complex web of cultural memories and historic connections that few acknowledge openly. The shared history, the intertwined faiths, and the prophetic legacies still shape perspectives on both sides. Ancient narratives inform modern politics, fueling both fear and hope. Can the wounds of history heal? Can the deep spiritual ties be a foundation for dialogue instead of division? The answer remains unwritten, suspended in the unfolding prophecy that connects Persia and Israel to the coming Messiah, long before modern nations drew their borders. Jewish communities thrived in Persia. Exiled from their homeland but never forgotten, they planted roots in ancient cities, Susa, Ecbatana, and Persepolis. These communities preserved their faith amid foreign courts, balancing loyalty to their ancestral god with the demands of Persian rulers. Throughout centuries, Jews in Persia experienced cycles of tolerance and persecution. At times, Persian kings favored them, valuing their trade skills and scholarship. At other times, suspicion and jealousy brewed among local populations, casting shadows on these minority communities. Remarkably, these Jewish Persians contributed to both their host culture and their own heritage. They translated sacred texts, engaged in philosophical debates, and helped transmit biblical knowledge through the Persian Empire and beyond. Their survival was a testament to resilience, a living bridge connecting ancient Israel to the lands of Persia, keeping alive traditions and hopes for restoration in a faraway land. The story of Jewish Persia is not just historical footnote, it is a crucial thread in the tapestry of faith, shaping Jewish identity in exile, and reminding us that God's people endure even when scattered. The emergence of Islam brought Persia back to the center of religious innovation. Persian scholars, poets, and theologians played pivotal roles in shaping Islamic doctrine. Their heritage from Zoroastrianism and exposure to Jewish and Christian ideas created a rich intellectual environment. Islamic theology absorbed Persian concepts such as the cosmic struggle between good and evil, angelology, and eschatology. These ideas resonated deeply, finding echoes in Quranic narratives and Hadith literature. The cultural interplay was not one-sided. Jewish and Christian minorities in Persia also engaged with Islamic thinkers, influencing and being influenced in return. The shared religious landscape fostered both harmony and tension. Understanding Persia's role in early Islamic thought helps illuminate the complex web of faith traditions that have influenced both Judaism and Islam over centuries. This legacy persists today, reminding us that religion, like history, is often a conversation across time and culture, not a monologue. Life under Islamic Persia was a study in contrast for Jewish communities. While generally protected as people of the book, Jews faced legal restrictions, social discrimination, and periodic outbreaks of violence. Communities developed intricate strategies to maintain their religious identity and cultural autonomy. Synagogues flourished, rabbinical scholarship thrived, and trade networks connected Jews across Persia and beyond. At times, Persian rulers patronized Jewish leaders and scholars, recognizing their contributions to science, medicine, and commerce. Yet the balance was fragile, dependent on the whims of courts and clerics. The intricate dance of coexistence shaped Jewish life in Persia for centuries, forging a unique identity rooted in faith and resilience. These historical experiences provide essential context for understanding the deep and sometimes fraught relationship between Jewish and Persian peoples, a relationship still unfolding today. Chapter 14, The Legacy of Ancient Persian-Israeli Interactions. Today the past is never truly past. The ancient ties between Persia and Israel resonate in modern political narratives, cultural identities, and religious beliefs. Iran, heir to the Persian Empire, often invokes its glorious history and its national identity, while Israel claims descent from the ancient Hebrews. Both nations entwined by centuries of shared history and conflict. Understanding this legacy reveals layers beneath headlines and political rhetoric. Story of alliances forged, betrayal suffered, and faith endured. For believers, these interactions are part of a prophetic timeline pointing toward the Messiah's return. A countdown written in the stars and scriptures alike. The question remains, can these ancient connections become bridges for peace, or will they continue to fuel division in a region desperate for reconciliation? The ancient rivalry between Persia and Israel continues to shape the geopolitical landscape. Yet amidst tensions, there remains a flicker of hope rooted in history, faith, and shared humanity. Dialogue between these peoples is not just political, it is spiritual. A search for understanding that transcends borders and ideologies. Religious leaders, scholars, and peace builders point to the deep bonds of scripture and history as foundations for reconciliation. The countdown to the Messiah's return invites reflection. Are we ready to recognize the signs and embrace the possibility of restoration? In the silence that follows the storm of history, there lies an opportunity to rewrite the narrative, not with weapons but with wisdom, not with hatred but with hope.